Hi everybody, I'm Charlie McCoy. Glad you could join me. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about some of the country harmonica techniques that I've used on many of my own recordings, on sessions with many great stars in the music business, movie soundtracks and commercials, what have you. A lot of people ask me, how do you do all that stuff you do on the country harmonica? Well, I'm going to try to pass on some of the techniques that have created my style, and I hope maybe that it'll help your playing and help you enjoy the instrument a whole lot more. There are a lot of different kind of harmonicas on the market, but personally I prefer the Hohner harmonicas, and I'm going to show you a few of them today. A lot of people say, gee, that harmonica of yours must cost thousands and thousands of dollars. But the truth is, most of the music that you hear today on country and blues recordings are done on the simple 10-hole harmonica. And these are called 10-hole diatonic harmonicas, and I'm going to show you a few of them. This is the Marine Band harmonica, and these things have been around since Moses was a baby, that's for sure, because they're dependable and they're sturdy. They take a lot of wear and tear, and I've been playing one of these for many, many years. I'm not going to tell you how many. Also, another favorite of mine is the Hohner Old Standby. And I like this harp because when I'm on stage, I can tell where Mr. Hohner is, make sure I got the right side up. In the last few years, it's been real popular to have plastic body harps, such as the Pro Harp and one of my other favorites, the Special 20. And these are really easy to bend notes on, and they have a great clear sound. You noticed earlier I referred to it as a harmonica, and there's a lot of different terms for it. Back in the country where I'm from, we call it a French harp. I've heard people call it a mouth organ, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to refer to it as the harp or as the country harp. Now, somebody says to me, what's the difference between blues and country? Well, mainly it's just an attitude. Tone is a little different, you know. You'll hear the blues players cover it up and choke it down real good. But in country, we play it a little purer than that. When we have an open note, we let it ring. You know, a lot of people ask me, what key do you play in or what key do you prefer? Well, you know, there's 12 of them, and they all sound a little different. For the purpose of what we're doing today, I'm going to use a standard C harmonica, and this is a Hohner Old Standby. So get your harmonica out and let's have some fun. Well, I assume that by now you're comfortable with bending notes on a harmonica. If you're not comfortable with it, or if this is a term that's completely foreign to you, I would suggest another video that I have called Beginning Country Harp, in which we really go through the bending of notes, you know, one by one, and really get into the nuts and bolts of the thing. But, you know, there's many notes that will bend on the harp, and I'll just go through a few of them for you. You can almost play a chromatic scale. I'll run through those bends for you real slowly. On hole number 1, we have a half-step bend from D to D flat. On hole number 2, we can bend it a half step or a whole step. We can go from G to F sharp or F natural. Hole number 3 is a real winner because we can get 3 half steps out of hole number 3. We can bend from B to B flat to A flat. Hole number 4, once again we're at D. There's a half step bend from D to D flat. Hole number 5 won't really bend a half step, but it has a nice effect to it. And hole number 6 will also go a half step from A to A flat. I'll run that whole scale for you one more time. Well, that's a pretty difficult scale, but I know you're working on it, and I know you can do it. In country music, one of the more important things, too, that we need is what we call the direct bend. It's real easy to hit a note and pull it down, but for playing melodies in country music, a lot of times we need to hit that note already pulled down, and this requires a lot of practice. For instance, going right to a note like to the B bent to an A. When you're going to go to that A, you've got to really think about what the pitch of it is, because because that reed will bend so much, it'll be easy to hit it in the wrong place. So you have to think ahead of time. Well, now that's a great exercise. And I'll show you another one that is really a help for direct bending. We're going to go from the 2-hole to the 3, go with it natural, then go with it bent a half step, then go with it bent a whole step, and then go with it bent a step and a half, like so. Well, that's a difficult exercise for sure. Might lose you a few hours sleep, but that's okay. That's what this is all about. I've been losing sleep for years over this thing. Another thing we like to do in country music is what we call grace notes. It's just a form of expression. You know, if you ever heard a singer who sings without phrasing or without expression, it's really kind of boring, you know. And I want to show you a little bit of the difference in playing a song. I'll play it on the straight harp with no expression, no bends, and then I'll pick up the cross harp and play the same melody, and you'll see what the difference is. This is why I prefer the cross harp. Now listen to the difference with the cross harp. It's all the difference in the world in the way those two styles sound. You know, the harmonica imitates a human voice more than any other instrument that I've ever heard. And so it's really easy to express a song with a harp, and the grace notes really help. I'll do that one more time for you. I want to play a tune for you now that encompasses some real slow bends, some direct bends, and it'll really get you into the feel of the kind of expression that country music can have as played on the country harp. Let's hear how that sounds with a full band. Well, that gives you a little bit of an idea how a song sounds like played with a band. A great band, too, by the way. It'd be pretty easy to practice if you had guys like that around you all the time. Another thing that people ask me a lot, how should I hold the harp? There's many different ways to hold it, and I'm not sure that there's any absolute correct way. Most of the people that I know begin by holding the harp in their left hand, like so, and then cupping the right hand over on top of it. But I've always done things differently ever since I was a little kid. And so, for some reason, I started picking the harp up in my right hand ever since I was very small. I kind of grab it in this finger, like so, and then add the left hand on top. One important thing you can do with your hands is the shading of the tone. In other words, you can change the sound of a note just by what you do with your hands. For instance, I'll play a note for you with no shading at all, just wide open, and then you'll see that as I add my hand and close down the space behind it, the tone will change, like so. You can feel that tone warm up when you close down on it with your hands. I'll try that one more time. Another important technique we use the hands for is vibrato. Many harp players, in fact most harp players, will do the vibrato with their right hand because of the way they hold the harp. For instance, but in my eternal quest to do things absolutely different than everybody else, the way I hold the harp, I play the vibrato with my left hand, like so. Now you might ask, why vibrato? Well, sometimes a song can sound pretty boring without it. For instance, I'll play you a little Western theme without vibrato and then play it with, and you'll see this is like night and day. And now with. Check the difference. Another important technique that we can do with our hands is what we call a roll, or some people refer to it as a trill, like so. Now I've seen a kid pick up a harmonica and go, well, it's not quite that drastic. All we're going to do is find two notes that lie side by side and move the harmonica so that they sound alternately but very quick. Now I'm going to play a little country blues tune for you that incorporates a whole bunch of these rolls. Now let's hear how that sounds with a whole band. Oh, I tell you what, I love those country blues. Isn't that great? Another important technique when playing any wind instrument is the use of the mouth and tongue. Sometimes to get a real full, rich sound, the bigger cavity we can make behind the note, the richer the sound will be. For instance, if I'm going to play a long, slow note, instead of being up here, if I open up the cavity behind it, it'll get a much warmer sound like. You hear the difference in that? One more time. Another thing I like to do is play harmony, and this is what we call split notes. I'm going to play a song, and I'll have 3 holes of the harmonica in my mouth, and I'm going to block the one in the middle with my tongue. Now listen to how this sounds. What I'm doing here with the 3 notes in, the one in the middle disappeared. That's when I covered it with my tongue. What I'm actually doing is playing on both sides. Now here's a tune that I'm going to incorporate almost entirely split notes. Now let's hear that with the full band. On a lot of my albums, you might have heard me doing a lot of fast runs. One great technique for some of these runs is the use of the tongue and tongue blocking. Instead of flying all around the harmonica, sometimes we can shift from playing one note at a time into a tongue block like so. What I'm doing there is when I put the tongue on the note, I kind of relax my mouth, let it open to the right. In other words, it's like push in and let out. As you put your tongue on the harp, you kind of open your mouth a little wider. And I'll take my hands away so you can see it a little bit better. I'll show you that technique just one more time because it can really help you on playing fast. Remember, as we put the tongue on the harp, we relax the jaw to the right and let the note come in. You can also keep yourself from running all over the harmonica to do a fast run. For instance, I could play this run, but by the use of the technique I just showed you, it can be simplified to. Notice the harp didn't even hardly move. Another great thing you can do with this technique is kind of an accordion effect, like Cajun music. I don't know if any of you have ever been down to South Louisiana where they eat the crawfish and the etouffee, but the music is equally wonderful. By using this technique, we can almost assimilate a Cajun accordion, like so. Once again, we're using the same technique, We have 3 notes, and we bring the tongue into the middle note, in and out, kind of like a hammer effect. And there's a great one way up high on holes 6, 7, and 8. Now I'm going to give you a taste of a little Cajun melody that we call boudin and étouffée. Now let's hear that with the whole band, and laissez les bon temps rouler. Ah, les musiciens sont fantastiques, eh? I love that Cajun music. Another technique that I do sometime in regards to splitting of notes is a little wider split. In other words, instead of blocking out 1 note in between 2, I'm going to block out 2 notes in between 2. In other words, with 1 it would sound like, but if I block 2, I can play an octave with the blow notes, like I'm playing notes 3 and 6, and with my tongue in the middle, I'm blocking out 4 and 5. It's a little tougher to do. You've got to open up a little wider and flatten your tongue out a little more. That's a good exercise to start with holes 1 and 4, block 2 and 3, and on the blow notes you can play octaves all the way up the harp. Here's a tune now. We're going to use some alternate tongue block, some with 1, some with 2. Let's hear that one with the full band. Well, if you found that technique a little bit difficult, you're right, it is. It's a tough one, and you have to practice quite some time for that. And here's another one that's not too easy either. Sometimes on my fast songs that you've heard on my records, I'll do runs where I alternate back and forth between the pucker method and the tongue blocking, for instance. And what I'm doing there is just playing a note with a single note. Same thing, put the tongue in, widen the mouth out, and then just move the harp just a little bit. Now here's a song using that technique. Now let's hear that one with the band. Well, we've been talking a little bit about country harmonica techniques. There are a whole lot of other techniques, for instance, have to do with the hands and with the tongue and with the mouth, especially in blues music. And if you're really interested in some of these other techniques, I would highly recommend a great video, Hohner's Complete Harmonica Techniques by the great Don Baker, and especially there's a lot of great rock and blues stuff in here. There's a lot of songs in some of my albums that people have a hard time figuring out. How in the world did you do that? For instance, there's a cut of the great Chris Christopherson song, Help Me Make It Through the Night, on this album. And all of a sudden, you realize, hey, wait a minute. And you finally figured out by now, I used two harmonicas to play that song. But this leads me to a funny story. A few years ago, an elderly gentleman walked into my office and said, you know, I've been a fan of yours, and I've tried to figure out some of the things on your albums, and there's a particular tune you played that I really like, London Derriere, better known as Danny Boy. And he said, you know, I've been thinking and thinking about how you did that, and I think I finally figured it out. And he said, I want to show you how I think you did it. Well, he showed me this great technique that I'll show you in just a second, and he said, is that the way you did it? And I said, no, but that's the way I'm going to do it from now on. Actually, the way I recorded that song was by using two harmonicas. Okay, the tune went. And when I went to the chorus of the song, I actually changed harmonicas. And anyway, the guy comes in and he said, there's only one way you could have done this. You have filed the fifth draw reed on your harp. And I thought about that, and I said, So he played it for me. And of course, that's when I drew the conclusion that that's the way I'll do it from now on. Now, the same song on one harp. What we've done is taken the fifth draw reed, which is tuned to an F. We've shaved the reed to raise the pitch to F sharp. Before we did it, of course, the harp sounded like. Great thing about this tuning is that with the bends, you can still have the F if you need it. Now let's get into the secret of how that's done. I've got a harp here I've already taken off the plate so you can see the inside. The fifth draw reed has been filed just ever so slightly. It's real easy to go too far with this, and once you've gone too far, well, what can I say? You've gone too far. Harmonica's no good anymore. The way we do this, I'm going to use two single-edged razor blades. The reason I use a single edge is I don't want to lose a finger in the process. So I'm going to put this down flat, with the draw reeds up. With one blade, I'm going to separate the reed from the others by putting it under the reed and over the one next to it. And with the other blade, right down at the end of the reed, always scraping toward the end of the reed, I'm going to file this just ever so slightly, 3 or 4 times, then take the blade out and try it out to make sure the pitch is right. And you keep doing this over and over, and you got to really be careful with this because it's real easy to go too far. Like I said before, if you go too far, you've gone too far. You'll notice the shiny end of the reed. That's where we filed it, just right on the very end. Now I'm going to play a little tune for you using the 5th draw reed tuned up. Let's hear how that sounds with the band. We talked a little bit earlier about vibrato, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because there's also another technique for doing vibrato. Is that earlier we did it with our hands, like so. But I've found that in this day of high-tech microphones, the microphones that we use on stage these days, I mean, if you get more than an inch away from it, you can't be heard. Therefore, there's no room, if you have a loud band playing behind you, there's no room to get your hands in between your mouth and the microphone to play the vibrato. And I found that, for me, the best way I can play is just kind of grab a hold of the mic here. So now I have to come up with another way to make vibrato. And so I'm going to bring it from inside the throat, like so. What I'm doing is kind of doing the vibrato from the throat and from the mouth. Like. One of the most requested songs I play is the Orange Blossom Special, in which we do train effects. People ask, how do you get that train whistle? Sounds like this. What we're doing is playing 2 notes side by side, the 5th and 6th draw reed, and it's kind of almost like a bend, like you would do a bend on one hole, but you just do the effect on 2 holes. You can also do it on different places, like on the 4th and 5th reed, or on the 3rd and 4th. One other important aspect of playing harp, as in any wind instrument, is breath control. Not too long ago, a guy came up to me on the stage right when I took a break, blew a big puff of cigarette smoke in my face and said, "How do you have so much air?" And I said, well, the first thing I do is not smoke. The second thing is always support from the diaphragm and not necessarily from the chest. One great thing about playing harp is that we get to breathe in and out while we play, unlike a trumpet player or a saxophone player who only breathes one way. Sometimes we run into a problem in that if we have a passage that will have maybe too many exhales and not enough inhales, or vice versa, then we can tend to run out of air. This is when we can do a little trick by using the nose while we play. In other words, if you're going to have too many exhales and you need to fill up with a little extra air, while you're playing a note, you can use the nose, like so. You probably didn't even notice that, but while I was holding that note, just for an instant, I opened my nose and got a little extra air. The same thing if we have a passage where we're going to need a lot of draw in, right before that we can let some air out. And I can do that like, you probably didn't even notice that either, but I almost emptied my lungs in just an instant by opening up my nose. Now I'll show you how you can set yourself up for a long, long phrase by doing that. I'm going to do a phrase with a lot of inhale, and knowing that's coming, when I get right to the point before it where I have the last exhale, I'm going to empty my lungs and set up for this. So like so. Well, I could have gone a lot further than that, but you get the general idea. The last technique I want to show you is a great train rhythm. In the Orange Blossom Special, especially in that song, and in other train songs, I like to do a rhythm. And if you get this thing right, it really sounds like a train. It sounds a little like this. What I'm doing is 2 exhales and 2 inhales. And I keep alternating. Now stay down on the low part of the harp, the first 3 holes, like. And just like a train, you can start it out real slow, and as you get better at it, you can pick the tempo up. Now I can combine the train rhythm with the whistle sound, and you might really think you're riding a train. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our tape on country harp techniques. Hope you've learned something from it, or at least it'll give you something to think about. This is Charlie McCoy saying thanks for your time this time. Till next time. So long, everybody, and keep on harping. Let's get with the band and smoke this thing.